In this tutorial, we're going to cover how to make, how to use items or spells or special attacks to use them when you pick them up or have them in your menu system. So in this case, from the last tutorial we made, we had the ring that we picked up. So we have the ring right here, and we added the item to inventory system. So now let's make a program or a code to make use of the ring so we can actually do something with the ring. So for the ring, let's say I'm going to go for making a barrier system, so when the character uses the ring, it puts an invincible barrier sitting around him. So I made it slightly transparent on the blue with the kind of blue outline just to make it a quick little drawing. So what's going to happen now is we're going to say, you can either put this on the character or on the health controller. It doesn't really matter which one you put this on, but I'm going to put it on the health controller. And say add event key press when I press a button, and I'm going to say letters I. So when I press the I key, because I'm going to say it's my item. So when I press the I for item, it's going to start using an item. So what's going to happen now is what we want to do is first we're going to check to see if we even have an item. So that's going to be under control, and we're going to go with check. And so the item is called ring item, and we don't need to put any dots in front of it because we're already the ring item variable was made on the health controller. So ring item is fine. So we're going to say if ring item is true or is equal to true, then drop in the brackets. So now I can do something. Otherwise, when you press I, if it's not true, so it's false, he doesn't have the ring, don't create the barrier. So we're going to go and create a barrier. So create instance, and the instance requires an object. So I've already made the barrier an object. So there's nothing encoded on the barrier, it's just an object. So we're going to create an object because an instance is an object. So we're going to create the barrier, and where do we create it? We're not going to put it in 0, 0. We're going to put it on the character's position. So that should be character left.x and character left.y. So the character left is the name of the character right here, character left. So whatever name you name your character, since that's what we're going to put the barrier attached to, use that name right here. So this name corresponds to your object character. So his position X and his position Y. So it's going to create the barrier on the character. And we press OK. So that should create the barrier. We also want to say that now that it's been used, control, we're going to set the ring item to false. So we no longer has it. Because it's being used now, we don't want to keep using it over and over again. We want it to be false. And we'll press OK. So once it's used, it no longer can be used because it's false now, and it'll create a barrier around them. But the barrier at this point will last basically forever. We don't want the barrier to last forever, so we need to set a time limit. And that would be under main too. So we put the, let's put an alarm one here. We've already used alarm 1, so we have to pick a different one now. So we're going to call this alarm 0 we've used. We're going to use alarm 1 now. And number of steps at 30 frames per second, 120 frames will be, 120 steps will be about 4 seconds. So we'll have a 4-second alarm. So if you have the ring, then create the barrier, tell the character who doesn't have the ring anymore, and set an alarm to turn it off. So when the alarm goes off in 120 frames, we need to create or add event alarm. And we're going to create alarm 1 because we told it to use alarm 1. So what is alarm 1 now? Alarm 1 says we're going to destroy and pick the object on the screen, which is the barrier. So we're going to, when alarm 1 sounds in 4 seconds, destroy the instance, which is object barrier, since we don't want that on the screen anymore. So we'll press OK. So now the barrier will get created on the screen. If we press play now, you'll see what happens. So if I press the I key, nothing happens. But if I pick up the ring, I now have the ring in the inventory, and if I press I, it creates the barrier and takes it off the list. The only problem with this, oops, let's try that again. So if I use the barrier now, it's not actually attached to him. So I can walk and hide inside the barrier if that's what you're looking for, but it's not attached to him. So we need to attach it to him. Also of note, the reason it disappears up here is because it's been set to false. So when we go to the press I key, we set the ring to false, in which case it doesn't draw anymore because the ring is no longer true, it doesn't draw it. So it helps clean off the menu system for us by default. If you wanted to change that, you have to redo some coding around to keep it up in the system. But generally, if it disappears out of item inventory, we don't want to use it anyway. So that's good that it takes it out for us. But now we need to fix the barrier. So we go to the barrier, and the problem with the barrier is that it's not following us. So we need to make sure the barrier follows us. So we're going to say add event step. And so every split second of the barrier's life while it's on the screen, because it's been created now, we're going to tell it to jump to position. And again, we don't want it to jump to 0, 0 on the top left. We want to jump into the character. So we want to make sure the barrier attaches to the character's X and the character's Y positions. And again, character is basically the name you called your guy. So it's the character left, character left. So it'll go to his X and his Y, and it'll keep jumping to his X and Y all the time for as long as the barrier exists. You don't need to click relative because it's already knowing to go to that X and Y. So we press OK on that now and press play. And so now when he picks up the ring and you press I, he'll walk with the barrier because the barrier will match his X and Y's wherever he goes. But now we need to do something with the barrier. So we can put everything on the barrier, or we can put it on the enemy itself. So let's say we go with the bat following, and we're going to say when the bat collides with the barrier, destroy this instance of the self, which is the bat. So when the bat collides with the barrier, destroy the bat. And you would basically have to do that for every enemy. We'd have to say when the bat flying, add event collision with the barrier, when the bat collides the barrier, destroy the self. And we could do that with the regular bat if you're in patrol. So more or less you have to code every item with the barrier, but that's should work. So press play, and you go over here, you pick up the item, and so now for 4 seconds it'll last whenever we're ready to use it. We use the barrier, and we just start wiping out the enemies because they don't last. So we have 4 seconds of a barrier that just took out all the enemies for us. If we play that again, we grab the ring, you press I to use it, it takes it off, and boom, it wipes out the bats. Alright, so that's pretty much how you would create an item that you pick up in the inventory system. So whatever item you picked up, as we mentioned in the previous tutorial, will pop up in the inventory system. You figure out which button you want to correspond to this, whether you want to shuffle through your items by pressing different various buttons, or whether you press whatever, let's say I, to create the item and to use it. So let's say you wanted to make, let's say, a magic attack. So right now I have the magic set as like an icon within the blue area. So we can switch between items if we want, or different magic spells. On a Super Nintendo controller, that would be like pressing the left and right keys. PlayStation also has left and right keys. So I can cycle through them, and then whenever we're ready, we could press M, or I guess like X on the controller. But M for magic, let's say, on the keyboard. And that'll use whatever magic spell is currently set here. We can set it to like a magic gauge or a magic meter, so it takes like hit points in the way, it takes part of the magic. But either way, we'll just focus on using the magic spell we have set up here. So to do that, we have one crest, which is the magic crest right here. I'm going to duplicate this one so I have two crests to show you the difference. And we're going to call this Magic Crest 2. And we're going to edit the sprite, and I'm going to put a different picture in here. Let's slide this over, and let's go with brush and kind of paint that out. Alright, so let's say, let's draw with white. And let's put, I don't know, something random. Whatever that would correspond to. So I'm not going to worry about making all spells active. But that's a different type of spell, let's say. And let's trace that in black real quick to make it look a little more similar. We've got alright, so press OK, and press OK. So now we have two different magic crests. We have whatever one this one is, and whatever one this one is. So we got two crests. So now we can switch between the two. So we're going to go over to health controller and say, let's see, add event, keyboard. Let's say you press the letters. Let's say you had a Super Nintendo controller. You're going to press the left key or the right key. We'll go right, I guess. So you press the right key on your Super Nintendo controller. This would be the keyboard, so it's not going to be the same as the Super Nintendo. You'd have to go over to mouse, joystick, and pick one of these buttons for the actual Super Nintendo. But let's just assume that was the R for the Super Nintendo. So we're going to say cycle through the list of magic spells. So we need to create a variable first. Let's see, on creation, we're going to go with control, add a variable, so we have something to start with. We're going to call this the magic variable, which is determining which spell we have. And the value we're going to set to default 0, so it starts on 0. And we'll press OK. So now we're going to go to the right key. So when you press the right key, it's going to set the magic variable to 1 relative. So it'll add 1 every time to the magic variable. So when you press it to 1, when you press it once, it'll become 1. When you press it a second time, it'll be 2. When you press it a third time, it'll be 3. And eventually, we're going to need to cycle through and restart looping everything. So we're going to press OK with that. And to get it to reset, we'll go to the step event of this, and we're going to say if the magic variable, let's say I had 4 different ones. I only have 2 icons, but let's say I had 4 different spells, just to give you a more range of options. So we're going to say is larger than. So if you've pressed it and it becomes 5, so it's larger than 4. So once you're at 4, it'll stay on 4, but you press it one more time, so 4 plus 1 is 5, it's larger than 4, then we need to set this to set variable magic to 0. So it puts it back to 0. So it can't exceed 4 because we only have 4 spells, theoretically. So if the magic is larger than 4, then set the magic back to 0 so it loops. So when you press 1, it goes to 1, 2, 3, 4, and resets back to 0 because it's larger than 4. So that will reset our looping magic spells. So now when we press right, it'll do that. And similarly, if we can go, if we wanted to make it a little more complicated, key press, let's say we do letters left. So we have the left key pressed. That should probably be a key press. Change event, key press, letters, right, boom. Okay, so we have the key press left and key press right. So on the key press left, it's going to be the same thing but backwards. The magic is going to be a -1 relative, so it puts it back in the left direction, and the minus is down the spells. So you don't have to scroll in both directions, but if you wanted to, a minus is 1. But now that a minus is 1, we also have to make sure that we have another option. So if magic is smaller than 0 because we're going negatives, then we're going to set magic to a value of 4. And we don't want relative because we would just want to set it to 4. So if it's greater than 4, it goes back to 0, and if it's smaller than 0 because we're going negatives, then it loops it to 4 and it keeps going down 3, 2, 1, 0. So now we have this looping between the left and right keys so we can cycle through our magic. So now we just have to go to the draw command. And so when on the draw command, we have the option to show which spell or crest we're going to look at. So now we're going to say if. So if, actually this should probably be rearranged, but if magic has a value equal to 0, then what do? We need to go over here to the magic crests, and we need to put this whole section within the magic crest section so it all appears underneath the health gauge, because they're all going to draw in this particular order. So we're going to put this under here, under that magic crest. So if magic is equal to 0, it'll show this magic crest. And now we're going to copy and paste all this. Copy and paste. And we're going to say if magic is equal to 1, then show this magic crest 2, and you'd repeat the process. So this is going to draw the heads-up display, which is on the bottom, and then the health bar, and then it'll show the magic crest, and then it'll put the health gauge on top of everything, and then the lives and the score and all that. So it's going to pick between these. So every step of the way it's going to check, is my magic 0, is my magic 1, and this will change it left and right. We'll set it up and down, and the steps will say if it's larger than 4 or less than 0, then rearrange those. So we have the 2 crests, and so this should work now. If I press play, the left and right keys should cycle through these spells up here. So left goes that direction, and right goes that direction. So it looks like it hasn't quite cycled through correctly. Looks like, oh yeah, that's right, because we have 4 of them. So we have, let's say if I press left or right to go right, we have 1, or 0, 1, 2, 3, because there's no spells, 4, and then back to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can cycle through your spells that way. If I had more spells, you could pick between them, but I didn't draw them all. So that's one way of doing that, so you can cycle through them. Now we're going to say, what happens when you use your magic? And again, you can put this on the character, or you can put this on the health controller, because this will be invisibly persistent most of the time. So we're going to go key press and say, when you press, I'm going to say M for magic, but depending on what controller you're using or keyboard options you want, M. So you press M for magic, and now it's going to say all over different magic combinations. So if magic is equal to 0, then do something. If magic is equal to 1, then do something. And it's all going to be based on creation, magic is set to 0, but it'll change every time you press left and right. So on magic, we just have to figure out what we want the magic spells to do. So on 0, I should have had, I guess, this magic crest. So we're going to try and create a spell that makes like an explosion occur or something. So when you press 0, let's say we're going to go to create a moving instance. So we're going to take moving instance and drop it in there. So we're going to create a moving instance. We need to create, I can either draw a new picture. Sure. We'll do a really quick picture. We're going to call this fire. Edit sprite, new one, okay, open. And this will be kind of like a fireball. So I'm going to draw with a big brush. Let's do some bright yellow. So we've got, that's way too big. That's kind of small. Alright, so we've got a little bit of fire. I should probably fill it all in with yellow. And we're going to switch to orange. I don't really have an orange. Let's go right over here. That's close enough to orange. We'll draw some orange in there. And then let's draw some red. So we've got some degree of a fireball. Let me press OK. So we've got this fireball now. Actually, let's call it fireball. And press OK. So the fireball is there, but we also need, because we're going to make an instance, we need this to be an object of a fireball. So fireball object, we're going to reference the fireball sprite, and that's all we need for now. So the fireball sprite will eventually have to disappear when it leaves the screen. But we have M, so we're going to create a moving instance of the fireball, and we're going to say, where do we want to start from? We want to start it from characters X and characters Y, and then you can plus and minus depending on where exactly you want that to originate from. But I'm going to start in the middle of him because he's exploding outwards. And you probably want to add in here also change or play the character sprite so he shows some kind of like magic reaction that he's causing the magic and not just it's happening on top of him. So you want to add the change character sprite in here also. Or just put the M key on the character himself. So we'll go to what speed do we want it to come out at? Let's go 6 and see what happens, and which direction do we want. I'm going to go straight to the right direction and just call that 0. And press OK. But I want multiple of these, so I'm going to copy this and paste it. And I'm going to say everything's the same except I want this to go, let's go 30 degrees. So it's going up 30, and we'll paste another one, and we'll do this one at 60 degrees, and we'll paste another one, do this one at 90 degrees. So it's going to create lots of fireballs in multiple different directions. We'll paste this one, and 90 plus 30 is 120, and we'll go all the way to 180. Paste another one, this is 150, and paste the last one, this will be 180. So it'll create all these different sprites originating from him at a speed of 6 in all different directions. And we'll press OK. So all these sprites will get created when you press the magic key while it's equal to magic spell 0. So all this will get created. We need to make sure that when the fire is created, it leaves the screen. So add event, we'll go with we could do, let's say outside room. That's the easiest way of doing this. We could just say when it's outside the room, just destroy the instance. Destroy self. So that way you don't have to worry about whether it leaves the view or not. Just say it's outside the room, just destroy it. Just like we do similar with the bat. Oops, the bat flying. This one said if an expression is true, if his x is greater than the view, then destroy him, get rid of him, or revert him back to here. So you could just say destroy at that point. But this also works pretty well. You say if it's outside the room, destroy the instance, so it clears it off your screen. The last thing to do is to say, for let's say the bat following, if the bat following collides with the fireball, then what happens to the bat? We want to destroy both objects. We want to destroy the self, which is the bat, and we want to destroy the other, which is the fireball. So it destroys both the self and the other when it collides with the bat. And if we wanted to repeat that with the bat flying, let's say, add event collision with the fireball, same exact thing. Destroy self and destroy other. So it destroys the bat and the fireball when it hits. You could say don't destroy the fireball, let it just emanate across the entire screen, wiping out everything in its path because it's a magic spell, and why not? So if I wanted to do that, I would just go with delete that and just say destroy the bat, and it'll keep flying across the screen. So this bat, if it hits it, it'll keep flying anyway. So let's press OK on that. OK on that. So to take out the bats, the fireball itself will destroy when it leaves the room. It'll create all these things, and you could put like a sound effect here if you wanted a sound to happen when this occurs. You could change the character sprite so he reacts when he creates the spell. And you probably want to also reduce magic. In this case, I'm going to say his magic is his health. So it creates all these, and I'm going to say minus 20 on his relative to what he has, not set him to negative 20. So he loses 20 health because let's say his health is his magic in this case. So he loses 20 health when he uses this magic. So everything should be set now. If I press play, so he can move left and right, he can pick up the ring if he wants. That would be the I for item. If I press left and right, so I press left, it'll cycle through all the different spells and the two that I have right now. So if I press M on here, there's no effect because he doesn't have anything coded to that. If I want to go back to this one, and I walk over here so I can see the bat, and I press M for magic, it creates a fireball effect where it blows across the entire screen. So if I press M again, boom, it fires out all the fireballs. So it's a pretty neat effect. If I press enter to restart the room, you can see that if I press it here, boom, the fireball kept going through the bat, and the other one, it stops right there. So I can keep firing multiple really fast, but eventually it'll drain my life quite all the way to the end because I have so much on there. So there's multiple ways you can do that, but that's one effect right there. So play it again. Boom, fire comes out and wipes out everything. Pick up the item, put the invincibility on, fire the fireballs. Alright, so that's a couple of different magic effects we can work with. Again, if you wanted to have just how you want to limit the amount of magic that he can work with. You can always go back and let's say, what is magic spell 1 equal to? We know what magic spell 0 is. What is 1 equal to? And you do the same for 3, or 2, and 3, and 4, because we said it that there would be 4 different magic spells. We just didn't draw all the different magic crests that you could possibly have. So that about covers how to do, how to use items and how to use magic spells and anything relevant to creating a more interactive game.